Nusach HaBracha is Meiracham Admor Noir Levarich B'Kashel L'Chag HaShvuos. Uh, the language of the bracha that my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, used to bless people in connection with the Yom Tov of Shvuos, B'Dibur U'B'Chsav. He did it both in speech when talking to them and also in writing, and he did it L'Yachid U'Larabim. He spoke to this when he mentioned this to individuals or when he mentioned this to many people, and he would say, "Kabbalas HaTorah b'Simcha b'Pnimis," that one should accept and receive the Torah with joy and internal. The Rebbe has some basic questions about this topic, and he says, "Well, in the movement seemingly is not understood. Inyan HaSimcha tzarich liyis lo'rak b'Torah." The idea of Simcha has to be not just in Torah, alagam b'mitzvahs, also in fulfillment of mitzvahs. Meaning, loirak b'kava Torah, not just in the line of Torah study, alagam b'kava avodah v'chasadim, also in the line of service to Hashem, known as davening and doing acts of kindness, tzedakah, other mitzvahs. Which Kosva Rambam, like the Rambam wrote, asimcha sheyis machadim b'asiyas ha-mitzvah, the joy that a person should rejoice in the fulfillment of a mitzvah. Avodah gedolah, it's a great service, a great avodah. Like it says, since you do not serve Hashem, your God, with simcha and gladness of heart, therefore, there are all types of issues with that. We don't find among all the mitzvahs that a person needs to do mitzvahs in joy, we don't find a special uniqueness about Torah, that Torah has to be some unique type of simcha. So if we don't find anything special about Torah, what's the reason? That's specifically concerning the Yom Tov of Shvuos, Zman Matan Torah, the time of the giving of the Torah. My father-in-law would express his blessing that there should be the acceptance of the Torah with joy. So the Rebbe says we can understand this based on what took place the first time around by Matan Torah. You remain in the Matan Torah. This will be understood by understanding the concept of what took place by the giving of the Torah the first time around. Then the Jewish people were like converts. They were not Jewish up till Matan Torah, and there was a whole process of conversion that took place, that they were nisgayer from their time going out of Mitzrayim till the receiving of the Torah. The Israel Gemara Mesech Yevamis, like it's brought down the Gemara in Mesech Yevamis, Matan Torah hu inyan hagerus. Matan Torah is a time of conversion. Therefore, we learn out from Matan Torah many detailed halachas concerning gerus. They brought a carbon that was by the Har Sinai, had to do with gerus. The fact that they also had tevila, which is the immersion, which had to do with gerus. They also had the bris milah, which was when they were going out of Mitzrayim on the way to Matan Torah. Also, an idea having to do with gerus. And because of Matan Torah's connection with gerus, that's also the reason why the book of Ruth, who was one of the foremost Yerdison of Klal Yisrael, is associated with the Yom Tov Shvuos. In some communities, they read the Ruth, but it's still, even in those communities like in Chabad, where we don't read the Ruth, that doesn't mean that doesn't have a connection. It has a very strong connection, because Matan Torah is a time of conversion, just like the Rus converted. So therefore, we remember it then because it's a remembrance and about the idea of the conversion, that the entire Jewish people converted them. Oh, by the way, another thing that we learn from Matan Torah is that a convert, a potential convert, needs to accept upon himself the mitzvah, and that's what the Yidden said, Naso v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. So when a ger comes to convert and he accepts upon himself the yoke of Torah mitzvahs, the order in this is that we really initially try to push him away. Why are you interested in conversion? Don't you know how persecuted we are and how difficult it is to live as a Jew? We try to convince him not to convert. Only after we see that he truly wishes to convert, then we accept him. What does this indicate? The idea of conversion has to be out of the person's own free will, which means besimcha. They are doing so happily. They are happy to convert. They don't feel coerced. If a person is converting against their wishes, if they're being coerced into conversion, it's not considered it's not considered a matter of a true conversion. After he converted, so then he was already like every Jewish person from birth. Once someone converted, so then he's like any other Jew from birth. That once a Jew from birth has no choice, and he can even be coerced to fulfill a mitzvah. Why can he be coerced to fulfill a mitzvah? Because a Jew from birth, including also someone that converted, that now is considered fully Jewish, he can now be coerced to do a mitzvah as well, once he accepted upon himself to do. Because the Rambam explains that this is not really coercion, this is what he really wants. Like the Rambam wrote about someone that the halacha says you can coerce him to do a mitzvah. Every Yid wants to be a member of the Jewish people. And he really wants to do all the mitzvahs, even though right now he seems to be saying otherwise. All Yitzra we should talk for. Now his Yetzirah is overpowering him, and that's why he's saying no. So really, the coercion to a person that's already Jewish, that we're coercing to do a mitzvah, is really revealing his true nature. But the actual conversion has to be not coerced, out of a person's own free will and with joy, but not in the way of coercion. Since the giving of the Torah is an idea of the conversion of the entire Klal Yisrael, it has to be specifically out of joy. It's explained in Mamad Excidus in what the Chazal say, that during Matan Torah Hashem bent the mountain of Har Sinai over them, like held a barrel over their head, as if he's holding the mountain over their head. That doesn't mean that they were coerced into accepting the Torah, but rather rather this mountain, in the expression of Chazal, we find that Avraham Avinu's love for Hashem is likened to a mountain. Through that was inspired and awakened the love by the Jewish people to accept the Torah with will and with joy. As opposed to it, if the acceptance of the Torah was under duress, would have been by force, then the matter would not be appropriate. Like Gemara says, by it would have been a great protest for the Torah that it was done under a coercive way. So the Rebbe goes on to explain another interesting statement of the Chazal. According to this understood, what Chazal say, the first luchas were given with a big tumult. There was the thunder and the lightning and the voice coming from all sides, and there was a very big tumult. So the evil eye had control over it, and that's why they were broken. In other words, a good thing should not be done in too much of a publicized manner, because it invites negative forces to overcome it. So the big tumult and the big noise and the big excitement surrounding the giving of the Torah was a reason that the Ein Hara could come about. The Dafka Luchas Achraynis Nitna B'Chashoynis Kaimo. Only the latter Luchas, the second Luchas that were given quietly, they remained. The Ein L'cha Mida Yafim and Atznius. There's no greater attribute and character trait that's better than modesty. Modesty is the greatest protection for everything. In the movement, seemingly it's not understood. If modesty is so important, if the quiet of the second luchas is so important, Hashem would know this. Why did he initially give it with a whole big tumult? Hashem knew that the tumult will cause the breaking of the tablets. Why did he give the first luchas with a great tumult? Why didn't he initially right away give it in a quiet way, in a silent manner? And that way there wouldn't have been the possibility for Ayin Hara. It would have been given in a sneeristic fashion, in a modest fashion, and everything would have been good. But the reason is because it had to be done in such a way. The Torah had to initially be given, part of the Gator's process had to be given in this whole tumultic way. The explanation this is, according to what we said earlier, that the acceptance of a Torah has to be specifically out of joy. Because if there's no joy in the acceptance of the Torah, then the whole idea of the conversion of the Jewish people couldn't have taken place. Therefore, the giving of the luchas had to been out of a big tumult. Because the tumult from above awakened the tumult and the joy by the Jewish children, by the Jewish people. That's the whole nature of joy. Joy is, person is very expansive. He's all over the place. Joy is not something that you hold inside. That's hispashtus hanefesh. That's the soul expanding outward. B'chinas rash in the way of a tumult, as v'yitzir v'gdarim, till a person goes out of their boundaries. That's why a person that's very happy, they sing, they clap, they dance. That's the nature of happiness. So therefore, there had to be a rash, there had to be a tumult, because there had to be the joy that accompanies the receiving of the Torah. So the Rebbe says, but doesn't this, if so, interfere with their freedom of choice, the fact that Hashem brought about this whole rash? So in the brackets, the Rebbe explains the whole tumult and the whole thing was only to help them out. It didn't force them to accept it, that because every person has a freedom of choice. And it was just the whole rash and the whole excitement and the whole production that went on by the giving of the Torah was in such a degree that it was made it easier on the person to be able to reach a level of joy, but not that it came from above. So let's skip down after the brackets, the third line from the bottom of the page. But in actuality, because of their bad choices that they made, the tumult caused and it that the luchas were broken. There had to be the giving of the second luchas quietly and modestly. So of course, that ever wants to know, how does this apply to us today? That was then. What about now? Dining movement is still not understood. What does this matter to us now after the giving of the Torah? The idea behind this is, since we know that these days are remembered and they are done, which means, like the Baal Shem Tov explains, that by remembering and celebrating and marking a certain date in the Jewish calendar, so then the very same thing that happened initially recurs now as well, and even more so on a more powerful manner. In the Bechag Shvuos B'chol Shana and the Yom Tov Shvuos every year. Koizer Mischadish Ha'inyan the Matan Torah. It's renewed again. The idea of Matan Torah, as it says, you Beinech Chadoshim, that the words of Torah should be like new things by you. Lagabe is Chachas Matan Torah B'Shana Zu, in regards to the novelty and the newness of Matan Torah. And this year, now, in our new state of Matan Torah, that new level of Matan Torah that we are at now, for that new level of the giving of the Torah that hasn't been given to us in the year previous, so now we are reliving Geirus again. This point is going to be important for the continuation of the Sikha that we're going to learn from Shabbos Parshas Naso, as I said. But so in that regard, we are experiencing Geirus again. We are experiencing again the level of conversion, and therefore it has to be with Simcha, just like any convert that comes to convert has to do it out of joy. Moving, it's understood. It doesn't in any way detract, heaven forbid, in the quality of our Torah study and everything else that we did the past year, that now we are converting. Maybe that calls into question everything we did the year prior. Not at all, the Rebbe says. Elasha Torah, he believes the Torah is without boundary. Therefore, every single year, there has to be the idea of accepting the Torah in a higher one, in one ascent after another ascent. In a way of traveling in such a way that's completely incomparable to the level that we were in before. Ad kedei kach, to such a degree are we traveling and ascending in comparison to the previous level, incomparably so, in comparison to this new ascent that we are going through Shvuos in this year, in comparison to what we went through in previous years. It's like a state and situation of conversion, like a child that was just born. And therefore, so we're a completely new child, completely new convert, and therefore, since in the Yom Tov Shvuos every year there is the idea of accepting the Torah anew, but not just accepting the Torah, but in a way of conversion. Therefore, there has to be the acceptance of the Torah with joy. And the Rebbe says in footnote 17, and since we have now experience, we can do the joy in such a way that no negative consequences should come about, like it happened the first time around, that there was the whole tumult and that brought about the negative things, that the luchas were broken. This time around, we're not going to have that issue because it's already, we learned from it and we appreciate from it. Or according to what we just now explained, we can explain a story that my father-in-law related on Shvuos 20 years prior to this. This was a Farbrengen in 1965, Tafshin Chaf Hey, and the Frierdiker Rebbe told us in Tafshin Hey, 1945, Yom Tov Shvuos. Ladmur Marash Chosid Brim Shemra Peretz Malamed Madrega. The Rebbe Marash had a chosid. His name was Reb Peretz. His job, he was a teacher. He taught children, but he was on a lofty level. And as usual in such a situation, he was terribly poor. His custom was Shvuos was the Yom Tov that he came to the Rebbe Marash. Once, when it came Shvuos, many guests came to the Rebbe Marash. Reb Peretz thought that there won't be sufficient time because of all the guests that arrived to go into Yechidus prior to the Yom Tov Shvuos. Suddenly, the Rebbe Marash's Gabbai came, and he told him that the Rebbe Marash is calling Reb Peretz to come into the Yechidus. Asa Yechidus, during Yechidus, his son and Raperetz named Admur Marash, who played Eiken Molik Bushra Lima. Raperetz complained before the Reb Marash that he's an empty vessel filled with embarrassment and shame. Admur Marash, and the Reb Marash told him, "Das darf man the canon the heaven." This means to be aware of this. This is also a level, so don't put yourself down. The fact that you even feel this way, this is indicative that you're holding by something. The Reb Marash asked him, "Are you saying Tehillim with tears?" And he answered, "Cain." He does say Tehillim with tears. The Reb Marash told him, "You should say daily 2 kapitlach Tehillim, 2 chapters of Tehillim with tears." But he concluded, "I will kabal satoyr tzrichim lech b'simcha." But to receive the Torah, one has to go with joy. Perhaps I'm thinking out loud that maybe that's why the Reb Marash felt the importance of calling in the Peretz before Shvuos, because of this final point that he wanted to tell them, that when it comes kabbalas HaTorah, that has to be with joy. Now, the Sipur Kodesh Mayacham Admur, and my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, related to the Katnusei Ros Raperetz Anal B'Chag HaShvuos, and that when the Frierdiker Rebbe was a child, he saw Raperetz on during the Yom Tov of Shvuos, Sha'aymer Tikkun B'B'chiyas. He was reciting the Tikkun, that which we learn all night out of a collection of different parts of Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, Mishnayos, Gemara, and so on. So he was reciting that with tears on the night of Shvuos. And therefore, like, how could it be that the Reb Marash told him that Kabbal's Torah has to be b'simcha pnimius? Why is he doing it with tears? But the Kenirish Kavonas Admur Marash Kabbal's Torah, so at least b'simcha, it seems to be that the intention of the Reb Marash and the acceptance of the Torah has to be with joy. Yilakriyas HaTorah, concerning the reading of the Torah. Shekoirin Aseres HaDibris, that we read Aseres HaDibris bedugnas matan Torah v'pam reshoina. When we're reading the 10 Commandments during the day, that's reliving the actual acceptance and receiving of the Torah. So at that time, when we're hearing the Aseres HaDibris in Shul, that's when we have to be besim. As a side note, we know already that the Rebbe's view and approach is even what in previous generations they were able to do with tears. We shouldn't be using tears. We should be doing everything in joy, even the Tehillim, even everything else. And it accomplishes as much as they were able to accomplish even with their tears. Anyway, getting back to what the Reb Marash told this Chassid Raperetz. It says above, seemingly the story is a wonder from beginning to end. Aleph, first question is, why only concerning the Yom Tov of Shvuos, Admur Marash, the Reb Marash told him, it's not at least besimcha, it has to be out of joy. He didn't tell him so concerning other Yom Tovim. All the Yom Tovim are called Yom Tovim for joy. So why doesn't the Reb Marash tell Raperetz, make sure all Yom Tovim you should do out of joy? It comes Pesach, make sure to do it out of joy, even though you're saying Tehillim with tears. Comes to Sukkot, you got to make sure to do it out of joy. What was it? The emphasis on the acceptance of the Torah, that it has to be, one has to go besim. Second thing is, since the Yom Tov Shvuos, as we know, is the yahrzeit, the day when David HaMelech passed away. This is obviously the day of the yahrzeit of David HaMelech is the most auspicious time to recite Tehillim, which is David HaMelech's book. A Jew that anyway daily says Tehillim with tears, why shouldn't he also do so on the Yom Tov Shvuos? The Yubin said this will be understood. According to what we said earlier, Shvuos is man matan Torah say the Yom Tov Shvuos, the time of giving the Torah, Nimtzoyim B'nei Yisrael b'maimed u'matzav shel geirus, Yidden find themselves in a state and situation of conversion. That's why they have to accept the Torah out of joy. After the acceptance of the Torah on the Yom Tov of Shvuos, when Yidden already became a Jew, now they've already accepted the Torah mitzvah out of joy. Now they have already gone through conversion. The whole Klal Yisrael has already gone through conversion. We deal with the general avodah throughout the year. There are differences in the specifics of how one does their avodah. There are those that their service to Hashem is in the line of love, kindness, the sphere of chesed. There are those that their avodah is in the line of awe, that's a level of fear. And there are those that they're in the level, their avodah is in the level of rachmanis, of compassion. That is all after receiving the Torah. But as we mentioned before, but when we're accepting the Torah, regardless of what my characteristic is, my nature is, how I usually serve Hashem for 364 days a year, but that one day of the year, the acceptance of the Torah, when we are going through a state of conversion, so then we have to do it out of joy. And to note, joy seems to be, we learned in other places it's not that way, but it seems to be the opposite of humbleness. For the acceptance of the Torah has to be the idea of humility. I am exalted and holy, that I dwell, but I am together with one that is low of spirit and humble. Like it says, my soul should be like dust before all. And that is the what enables my heart to be open with your Torah. So the Rebbe again says, the humility, as great as it is and as important as it is as a prerequisite for Torah, that is only after we receive the Torah. The idea of humility has to be after the acceptance of the Torah. As opposed to the acceptance of the Torah itself, it has to be specifically out of joy. The truth is, in other times we learned about this, that humility is not really contradictory to joy. But even the external aspects and components of humility that seem to be contradictory to joy, we need to know that the time for humility is after the acceptance of the Torah. During the acceptance of the Torah, we are converting again. After going through conversions many times, every single year we are converting on a higher level, and therefore we have to do it out of joy, just like someone that initially converts has to do it out of joy. Now the next page or so, the Rebbe is going to talk about the other aspect of what the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that it has to be b'simcha u'b'pnimius, with joy and internalized. And the Rebbe is going to connect it also to this idea of conversion. But that's just one more piece over here that we're going to learn. Then we're going to get back to the topic of joy. According to what we explained before, that we have to accept the Torah with joy. Why do we have to accept the Torah with joy? Because we are a convert, and as we are converting every single year, we're converting anew. So since we are converting, a convert needs to do it out of joy. It's also understood concerning the idea that it has to be in a way of internalized. The fulfillment of all mitzvahs has to be first and foremost what's important. We're doing the mitzvah. We're doing it in action, or we do it in speech. In addition to this, it also has to be internalized. That he's fulfilling the mitzvah with his mouth, with his svasa, and with his lips. They honored me. but his heart is distant from me. Mitzvahs Hanashim Ulamada, he just does it out of habit. That's insufficient. A person needs to make sure that when they fulfill a mitzvah, it's internal as well. Yet, despite that, the Rebbe says, "Aval apal pikein still in all. Gam kasher chaser b'kiyam mitzvahs. I feel of a ma'aser poil, even when a person is lacking the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Even if chaser shalom, they're lacking the actual fulfillment of the mitzvah. They're not doing the mitzvah. The Chazal said, Yisrael af b'shachat Yisrael. A yid, even if he sinned, he's a yid. Even the sinners of Yidden are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. How much more so if a person is lacking the fulfillment of mitzvahs in an internalized fashion? They're doing the mitzvah, but they don't have it internalized. It's not really what they are about. It's not who they are. So we don't worry about it because the main thing is doing it. The Chazal said, a person should always be involved in Torah mitzvahs, even though he is not doing it for the sake of the mitzvah, for the sake of Hashem. How come? That out of doing it, not for its sake, not for the sake of the mitzvah, he'll come to do it for its sake, for the sake of Hashem. Though the entire time that the person does the mitzvah without doing it for its sake, it's missing the pnimius. It hasn't really become internalized within the person. That is all. When a person does the mitzvah once, he is already he's already a yid. Back to what we were saying before. But I just gave Shabbat this guy when we speak about a convert that is coming to convert. The person needs to accept upon himself the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs. Not only in action and in speech, but also the convert needs to take upon himself, the potential ger needs to accept upon himself to fulfill the mitzvah, also in thought. This means it's insufficient that they accept upon themselves to fulfill the mitzvahs. In actuality, but his thought should be somewhere else. And his thoughts, his interests are not in mitzvahs. The acceptance of the mitzvah has to completely and thoroughly permeate. And an analogy for this can be found from the kingdom down here below, from government down here below, that's similar to the government above, says the Zohar. And says the Gemara. Like we see it in the United States, to be able to gain citizenship, one has to agree to fulfill all the laws of the country. And a person that says there's one law, a specific law, this law I don't want to accept. He won't be accepted as a citizen. As opposed to someone that is a citizen, he can scream from the rooftops that he doesn't believe or doesn't accept a certain law. It doesn't make a difference. We don't care and we don't say, you lost your citizenship because you decided you're not accepting this law. So getting back to what we said before, since every year is renewed the general idea of Matan Torah that's similar to the idea of becoming a ger, moving, it's understood it's understood that the acceptance of the Torah, since I am now again converting, I am now again becoming a ger. So the acceptance of the Torah has to be in an internalized fact. I know Lakabal, Alatzme, Lakaim is called Yonah Torah mitzvahs. He has to accept upon himself to fulfill all matters of Torah mitzvahs. Like we said before, not only in action and speech, but also in thought. Now we're going to skip over to the Farbrengen that the Rebbe said in Shabbos Parshas Naso, that over there he clarified some of the points. First, the beginning of Farbrengen, he reviewed everything that we just now spoke about, and he clarified the point further, and he concluded. We'll start from the conclusion at the bottom of the page. Earlier, the Rebbe mentioned in the Sikha that we find something very interesting, that we find that there is a seeming contradiction, that different Mefarshim speak about it. And they say that concerning, on the one hand, it says that Hashem held a mountain over their head, like we said before. And that's why they accepted the Torah. And because of that, we've learned in different Purim Sikhs, it's considered a great protest because it seems as if we were coerced to do it. And on the other hand, it says that it was Naso v'nishma, that even before the acceptance of the Torah, it says that the Yidden already told Hashem, we will do and we will hear. So how does the two things fit together? So the Rebbe brings down that some Mefarshim say that when it comes to Naso v'nishma, that they accepted the written Torah. But the oral Torah, they didn't have an ability to accept it because there is a rule. A person cannot acquire or give over acquisition to someone of something that is not yet in existence. So, for example, let's say I have an orange tree. I can't say I'm selling you or giving you a gift all the future oranges that this tree will grow from the summer of 2025 till the summer of 2030 or something like that. You cannot acquire something that is not yet in existence. You can only give over something that's in existence. So the Rebbe says, in a similar vein, this is the reason why when it came to Torah Shebeksav, that was in existence. They had already, at least those parts of the written Torah they had the things that Moshe Rabbeinu already wrote down for them, that they could accept. But the oral Torah, which was not yet in existence, they couldn't accept. And for that, Hashem had to force them, and that didn't apply to Naso v'nishma. For that, there had to be the idea of Hashem evoke within them and cause the mountain that stopped to stand over their heads. So the Rebbe is going to use this concerning what we said before, that every year in Matan Torah, we are becoming new converts as well. That every single year, it's, even though we converted in the year 2448, when the Torah was first given, still in all, the year following, we need to convert again, and the year following, we need to convert again. Why? Because as we mentioned in the previous part of the Sikha that we learned, every year we're going up a level. And we have new things, except for the fact that we actually have new things in the Torah. Every year there's new revelations and new chidushim in the Torah, new halachas and new applications and so on. But spiritually, we're going up to a higher level. And for that higher level, we need to now convert anew. We need to get to a higher level of conversion. Let's see 3 lines in the bottom of the page. According to this, will be understood concerning the time of the giving of the Torah every single year. Just like when the Yidden said, we will do and we will listen. When they said it concerning the written Torah, that did not help and that did not apply for the oral Torah, which was as of yet not given. Let's skip the parentheses. Why? Because when they said, we will do and we will listen. The oral Torah was still something that was not yet in the world, and since it was something that was not yet in the world, there could not be an acquisition of it. In the Matan Torah, so too it's concerning the advantage that and the ascent and the quality in the general idea of Matan Torah, not just the difference between the written Torah and the oral Torah, but every year we say there's another ascent and another ascent, all these 3,300 plus years since the giving of the Torah. That the fact that we accepted and we received the Torah and we converted and we converted out of joy, so that was not enough. That we did that 3,300 some years ago. Even because then this ascent and this quality, this higher level of acceptance of the Torah was still not yet present. It had not yet come into the world. So the Rebbe says like this: this means to say, hey, because the everlasting nature of the Torah, it's drawn down and it's affected the general idea of Matan Torah the first time around for all the years following it, ad soif kol hadoros, till the end of all generations. And like we say, that kol mashatal mitvasik asid l'chadish, everything that a diligent student will come up with a new and novel interpretation of the Torah, that was already nitna l'Moshe v'Sinai, was given to Moshe on Har Sinai. And the same thing in all the ascents in the Torah and all the elevations in the Torah and all the experiences was already given in its core at the first time that the Torah was given. But still in all, that since every single year, when Shvuos comes along, a new light comes down and is revealed. Like the Rebbe explains by all Yom Tovim, especially Rosh Hashanah, that there's a new light that always comes down every single year of that revelation of that Yom Tov. So the Matan Torah of the previous year is nothing compared to the Matan Torah of this year. For this reason, there's added an advantage by the person that receives the Torah to such a state that it's an advantage that's incomparable. And in movement, it's understood. In other words, it's an elevation and an ascent, a level that's incomparable to what he received the Torah the previous year. So therefore, it's understood. In comparison to the ascent that's renewed in the time of Matan Torah, in the year when the Rebbe said the Simcha in Tavshin Chafei 1965, it's insufficient the fact that I accepted the Torah and the previous year, because that advantage and that level, that quality was still in a way that had not yet come into the world, and therefore we need to accept it anew. And because we need to accept it anew, we need to do it with joy, etc. But Pashto simply put, since a Jew does not know in what state and situation they'll be in the coming year, there is no power and strength to everything that he accepts upon himself now, because he doesn't know the conditions that things will be next year. Move on. So here the Rebbe concludes in our topic, this is understood, every single year. There has to be the acceptance of the Torah with joy and internalized. It's insufficient that the previous year he accepted the Torah in a way of joy and internalized. The advantage that came about in this year in such a manner of something that never came into this world. It's something completely new. This ascent, this greater quality of receiving the Torah this year over the previous year. For this, it did not help the fact that the previous year I accepted the Torah because it wasn't in existence yet with the experience of this year. Because of the novelty of the Matan Torah of this year. That's no way of conversion, Kanal Baruch, like we spoke about at length previously. There has to be the acceptance of a Torah in a joyous fashion and an internalized fashion. By days and through this, it comes down for the entire year that we should have the acceptance of the Torah, and we should have it with joy, and we should have an internalized connection with the Torah. To we merit the perfection of the idea of the giving of the Torah. The bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, and the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, Yahweh v'yigalenu v'karon mamish, you will come and redeem us soon, mama.